Good morning, Revealing Truth Ministries family, and welcome to this Thursday morning Deeper Dive Live. We are live in the building with the livest live audience in all of Tampa Bay. We welcome you to the chat. Go ahead and let us know that you dare. Drop something in the chat. Say good morning to those who are chatting with you. Welcome them to June. We've made it. June, we are here, and we appreciate the opportunity to get together at this time. The Deeper Dive gives us the chance to attend to the things that God has said to us. We've determined to be people who are most blessed. Wow, man. It's a great time to be most blessed. We've entered into the summer. The summer is here. The weather's been great. Open the sunroof, let down the windows, enjoy it, right?
Let's go.
Pastor Brian is in the building with us.
All right, Pastor Brian.
Pastor Brian is here with us.
Sir.
We're going to continue our conversation from Sunday's message. When delay feels like.
When delay feels like denial.
I think that feel is so important, right?
The feel is so important. Let me do
denial. And, in the time that we have today, I think it's so good.
Like Greg is tripping right now.
Still in the pocket. That's a good podcast microphone.
I told I was going to sit up.
That's a good podcast
I told I was going to sit up,
microphone.
but then I realized I sat back.
Yeah. So it's going to catch you no matter where you go.
It should.
It's got your voice. It's got you.
Okay.
All right? It's going to do what it was per you. Let's talk about desires.
Yeah.
Right? Something that we all can connect to, we all can relate to, but not often do we connect how precious our desires are to God.
Yeah.
And you mentioned some things on Sunday that I think were eye-opening for many about how God will use desires in order to move us in a certain direction for development. So, and as I'm listening, I'm really intrigued. I want to hear more about that because I think, as I just think, and I think there are many people, especially in our ministry, who can relate. Man, I'm like, man, let's handle. I kind of separate desires from what I would say handling business. Let's do what needs to be done. And I think we have many people a part of our culture who are just work first. Let's get it done, and due to upbringing or whatever. And we often dismiss desires that's a secondary thing that comes later after you do this work. So connecting or saying, delight yourself in the Lord, God will give you the desires of your heart. Desires are valuable to God. And so let's talk more about how God will use our desires for our development.
Right. And so it's so as soon as you start talking, my mind just went it continued to explode because desires, it's everything. And I think that a lot of times as believers, and I know I said on Sunday, we get so deep that we miss that God wanted his yoke to be easy. And that's so good. To me, one of the easiest ways for our relationship with God to become one that is easy to bear, is to understand how, first of all, understand that he created us. And so he ultimately understands how we function. I know we pass a lot of credit to scientists for how they, quote, discovered and talk about how our brains function, but you got to remember that God was the architect of that brain,
right?
And so he understands how we function and what makes us do what we do and what makes us not do other things. And so one of the things I know none of us can desire, and sometimes you say, man, that person has a strong will, or that person has that person is motivated, or that person is focused. And what are you saying? They really have just locked in on a desire that moves them,
right?
And so because that is our nature, that anything that we desire, we would change our behaviors, we'll change so many things about ourselves to achieve what we desire. Why would God not use that same system he curated for us to live a life that's pleasing to him? Yeah. And so I said, when you really think about it, it's really far greater of a thing than we give credit to. Right. Because we think it's fleeting. We think that our desires are movable. And the truth of the matter is they're not. Now you may try to reform them, you may try to relabel them, but a lot of that's just your I would say just your maybe even your aggravation with your personal process, but you know what you wanted,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's almost like people go buy a car. I remember my dad used to sell cars,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, "Listen, they told him from
Yep.
day one that like your job is to sell the cars we have, not the cars they want."
Right.
Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
people are gonna walk onto this lot
Right.
and they want a car.
Mm-hmm.
They showed up with a desire,
Mm-hmm.
but we only have these ones.
Yeah.
And so, regardless of what they showed up wanting, your goal is to sell them what we have.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, that's what a lot of people do. They're just buying what's available. They're just cashing in for what's available. But do not deny the fact that you know what you wanted. Like, but then what you wanted it now. So then you started making compromises. You started to change what you even said, right? You know, we've all had those conversations,
Yeah.
right? Man, I came to this restaurant because I wanted steak. You open up the menu and they start talking about how good the seafood is. Now you're like, man, I don't know if I want the seafood or not. And if you're there with an honest company, you're like, hey, I thought we came for the steak.
Right.
But because of how good they make the seafood sound, right? You know, you changed your mind.
Right.
And I'm simply saying that to say that we are people that are led by our desires.
Or
but we,
even for this conversation, the
Yeah.
price of the steak changed your mind.
right? You saw the
That's
price.
the truth, right?
You know,
Maybe I don't want steak
and if
today.
if
That's
you
what
were
happened.
dating or you're a husband,
my gosh.
right, or whatever, I'm putting it in the male perspective.
Yeah.
You came for the steak,
Right.
Wife ordered the lobster.
Yeah.
Now you're eating the salad. Like
Exactly.
It's and she's like, I thought the steak. You're like, babe, you know what? Tonight's about you.
That's
You
right.
know, like
That's right.
that's an undercutter way to say like
Yeah.
you will my steak auction with your
With
selection. You know, or if you got one of them wise wives, right? One of the wise wives, they order last, right? So you be there at work, be like, nah, I think she's ready. And then like, nah, let him order. Be like, nah, ladies first. You know what I'm saying? Like you're going back and forth, like, baby, just say what you want so I can adjust what I desire, right?
You know what's
I'm
happening
essentially
here.
saying that we do that throughout our whole day and act as though we didn't have a deep-rooted actual outlook.
Right.
And then we face life and we make compromises all the time. And just because you're making compromises, that doesn't mean that God compromised with you.
Right.
When you were
Reverse that. You can say that one again. Just because
you're
made
willing to make a compromise,
right.
that doesn't mean that God made a compromise with you.
Right.
Right.
I
And-
can add this too,
Yeah.
because on that point, I've seen people think that because they would choose a detour that no longer had them in line for the development that God was planning for them. Like people even make church decisions, right? Because they were being called or asked to a different level of accountability, different level of responsibility, and the detour that I'm just going to go to a different church. As if God is going to change his mind about how he wants to develop you. Like the same
Listen.
development he planned for you there, you're just going to find it where you're going.
Listen, like that opens up a whole different discussion that we're gonna have a whole series about, right? Our next series is gonna really be aimed at that. And prayerfully the fruit of it is that people finally realize that the goal of me having a relationship with God is I bring him with me.
Yeah.
And so you're abiding with him, he's abiding in you. And so your fellowship with him becomes your atmosphere. And that eliminates all those thoughts of like, well, man, like I said, I'm not getting my way here, so I'm going there. Well, I mean, is God, you do realize that it's God who's the author and finisher of all that's going on with you, right? And, you know, I'm not saying that there isn't moments, but I'm saying like, man, there's certain things that just are irrelevant to God. And I said one of them on Sunday,
good.
I said, you know, we think of things in time. Like, man, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Like, let's stop saying that. Right? Like God is not in a rush. Right? Like he's not. And but then people have all these things that they're like in their own minds to create their own time frames, which causes them to change what they say they desire because man, I have this desire, but it's not going to be able to happen in my time frame. Full transparency, I went to school to be an architect, right? I switched to business. You want to know why I switched to business? Anybody that knows me knows like this boy has design oozing out of his body, right? Because at the current time, it's just so funny how your framework will make you just do things.
Yeah.
I knew without a doubt that I wasn't called to be no out-of-state student. So I was going to be at home. right? I was gonna be in Tampa, so that meant for me, that meant USF because they accepted Bright Future scholarships, not UT, right? University of Tampa didn't take that, so I had two choices: University of Tampa or USF. I wouldn't even say I had choices. Bright Futures made the choice for me. I'm saying it this way so people understand how we say God led us somewhere, right? And so honestly, if I peel it back, it was more like, man, some legislation in Tallahassee really determined where I was going to college.
Yeah.
Because if they would have made UT, I would have went to UT.
Right.
If they would have made it for Bright Future scholarships. But at the time, you couldn't get Bright Futures and go to UT, private institution. So I went to USF. Went to USF, got there. I love architecture.
Yeah.
I sat in that man's office, and he said, listen, currently, we do not offer a bachelor's program for architecture. We only offer a master's program. I said, well, how long does that take? He said, a minimum of 8 years. I said, well, that's not God's will for my life. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
He put that time, and immediately I was like, that must not be it. Like, I literally, because of the time frame, I backed out. I was like, man, that ain't that. I know God ain't called me. I barely made it here.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
8 years. Yeah,
I don't even know if I'm gonna make it 4. You know what I'm saying? You talking about 8?
Yeah,
I just need some paperwork. You know what I'm saying? I went home and I looked up like, man, how long before you get an associate's? It was like 2 years for an associate's, and I was like, yeah, man, that might be me. You know what I'm saying? Like. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was, all this is time. And I look back now and I'm like, man, I would have had like 4 degrees by now. Like, I would have had my architecture, you know, all that other type of stuff, man. And I love, you know, hopefully people are getting, I'm talking about me, but hopefully so that you can see yourself. But essentially, connect. Like, absolutely, time changed everything. Yeah. And so then I switched majors. Literally switched majors. Like, my whole life I was drawing. I've been drawing since forever, right? You know, man says 8 years, and I switched my whole major. Go take business, because that's specific, right? You know, really. That's a catch-all for all people who just trying to get out. But you know what I'm saying? So I went and took business.
I think so many of us can relate. Yeah.
So
telling our stories too.
I know. So I went and took business. You know, I don't even think I had the balls to say God told me to do it, because that would have been ridiculous. But I like, some people do though. Yes. Right. You know. Meanwhile, ignoring the architect in me, I'm sitting in business classes drawing houses. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's. You know. Long story short, man, no, I didn't have.
Detours.
Boom. Detours. Right. Circling all that to say all that was time. Yeah. You know, and I think that, and I talked about, that was almost the last point on Sunday, is God isn't limited by time, but he is limited by space. And those points.
I want to get into that too, because that's a good part. God isn't limited by time, but he is limited by space. So I want to talk about making space. And maybe
I want to talk about this first though.
Okay.
Right? This is a little minor point, because I said John 1:4. I went back to the message. I didn't read it. There was so much beauty in that, because we know that Jesus is full. He's a person of grace and truth. Yeah. Grace. He's not limited by space. Truth. Grace. He's not limited by time. Right. That's his grace. Yeah. His grace is, he's not limited by the times that we have in our heads. He's not limited by time, long or short. That's the grace of God. At any moment, his undeserved favor could come. Here's the truth of Christ, though. That's good. He is limited by space. Yeah. Like, there has to be space for faith. Right? And, but no, that's all I want to say.
That's good.
Those points were actually divided in grace and truth. I didn't say that in Sunday. Got it. Was to show that what is the problem is that it's Jesus. He's full of grace and truth. Ooh, right? That's the problem. That's the problem. He brings both grace and truth.
That's good.
The grace is not limited by time.
We love grace.
That's beautiful.
Yep.
Here's the truth.
That's right.
He is limited by space. Yeah. Like, if you don't have the faith for it, It's gonna be problems, right?
Let's see if we can get this to connect to space and creating space. I want to go back to even just building up the value of desires. Sometimes I think we dismiss desires because we put ourselves in like, I am not that real motivated, high energy target, like I'm
Yeah.
locked in type person.
You're not right. I tell you all the times. Listen, I love Revealing Truth Ministries. I love church. I love God. I love all of this. There's few times where I can't sleep because I'm so passionate about it. Right. I say that because one thing culture says is if you're not losing sleep over
Right.
it, you're not passionate about it. That's a lie. I go to sleep every night. And I love what I do every day.
Right.
I'm saying this because a lot of us have barometers
Right.
that to measure our passion
Yeah.
that the world created,
Right.
not God.
That's good.
And so it's like you may be saying you're not passionate. That's only because you listen to all these motivational speakers tell you out of their flesh what passion looks like when it's not the truth.
Right.
Like, I love everything I do, but I went to sleep last night.
Right. Right.
They
That's
didn't
good.
keep me up all night. I wasn't, that's what they'll tell you. Like,
Right.
man, find you a dream that keeps you up all night.
Yeah.
You're not, you can be dreaming during the day now because you ain't sleep. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
it's not true.
That's good.
Now there are moments where it's like sleep doesn't matter. But that's not every day. Right?
Yeah, that's good. So you're not allowing the outside to define you or misdefine you,
Yeah.
and then you not pursue something
Yeah.
that God has put in your heart
Yeah.
because you just don't see it.
Desire grows in pursuit as well. I believe that like we'll have something that it seems like it's like, man, I just can't ignore it. Whatever you want to say. But then it's like as you go into it, it just unfolds layers that continue your pursuit. I mean, I would say this, that like curiosity and God's path are all they're kind of similar.
Yeah.
Like I just wonder about it, you know? And like, man, and it just well, honestly, that was like man, you talk Pastor Mark. I'm thinking so many things right now. I'm just thinking about Jesus and when he met his disciples, and man, like he came and honestly, they were waiting for somebody to come
That's
and
right.
help them out of their situation. They were hopeful that Jesus was that person, but as we hear throughout the journey, they were still wondering, is he the Son of God?
Right.
For a good little bit, but their curiosity, their man, they like it wasn't as strong as what it sounds like. I hear people saying like, man, and Jesus picked his 12. Well, his 12, like if you listen to all their stories, there weren't like one of them. Few of them needed a whole miracle
Yeah.
to join the journey.
And they still weren't 100.
And they still wasn't 100.
Right.
Like he literally was like, man, you didn't catch anything all day.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Throw the net on the other side. And
Right.
they threw it on the other side. Well, this dude must be somebody. They didn't even give him Jesus yet.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? But we talk about like our paths and our pursuit and our commitment. Like it's like this rock solid thing when Jesus' disciples needed miracles to even barely believe he was the Son of God. Like they were walking with him and
That's
still
good.
had questions.
Right.
And so it's like, what are we saying? Because people are like, I have questions. I must not be passionate. Jesus' disciples had questions about him being Jesus, and they watched miracles with their own two eyes.
That's right.
The questions aren't the problem. Right?
Right. That's good. That's good. That's good. So then let's talk about how curiosity or even our desires then can be used to create space.
Because that's what I'm saying too. They had a desire.
Right.
They had a
Right.
desire to see justice be done. The disciples. And here came somebody. That's why they were mainly disappointed when he was like, man, I'm finna down this cross. It was like, that doesn't sound like the victory lap.
Right.
Like we gotta defeat it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
When you say justice, they're looking for rights to be made or wrongs to be made right. Like,
yeah, they were looking
we're
for
God's
like,
people. Right.
I'm gonna go ahead and step on some toes, right? They were looking for, reparations.
Yeah.
If I were to make this modern, like they were looking for their reparations.
Yeah.
And here
Payback.
comes Jesus. He gonna get our reparations.
Yeah.
And Jesus is like, yeah, I am your reparations. And they're like, whoa, buddy. Like, no, man, we mean like literally take down the powers that be. He's like, we are,
Right. Yeah.
Man doesn't fight by flesh and bone, anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I guess they ignored them pieces.
Right. They did. They did.
We fight spiritual battles. And so, but they were waiting for something else.
Right.
My whole point of saying that is they had a desire
Mm-hmm.
to see justice be done. And that was a part of what got them to follow Jesus,
Right.
because they believed that he was going to be the one that helped bring that to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
My point is they had a desire.
Mm-hmm.
Just the same way we have desires.
Right.
And man, that desire led them to walk a journey, like leave their houses, their home, leave their families, like all of this. And they weren't even think about this. Like Jesus is constantly like teaching them lessons, and they're discovering that he is the Son of God. And they left all their houses and homes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they weren't even that sold.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm saying that to say, like, we look for so many more things to validate our movement.
Yeah. Mm.
And that's why I use the word curiosity. I know that's not a word we put in our faith realm.
Right.
But if I had to make a modern
It's not
day
a word that we bring into our adult realm. Right?
No.
Curiosity is for kids.
And the Bible tells us
right?
to remain childlike, right? And
That's
it
right.
doesn't mean immature.
Yeah.
I think it's an openness, that is trying to get us to say, like, man, don't be so damaged by what your life has been. That's what childlike. When I hear childlike, I'd be like, children aren't damaged from life, but many adults are just damaged from life, and it kills their curiosity. It kills their wonderment. Like it stops them from exploring. Like kids explore, kids wonder, kids touch it to make sure it was hot. I don't care if you said it was hot. I'm gonna touch it with my own two hands.
Myself. Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? That's what kids do.
Yeah.
But adults don't do that no more, right? They're like, nah, man, if it sounds dangerous, seems questionable, I'm just gonna go ahead and sit back and see what happens. Right? You're gonna sit back and see what happens. Like, and then you're gonna be like, man, I missed out again. That's your problem. You keep sitting back to see what happens instead of just going in, man. Realizing that, man, you don't like, man, enjoy life. Enjoy it.
Good.
Like, man,
Yeah.
bumped it, man. 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 There's so much I can say right now. And God just keeps on, man, I'm about to cry, but he keeps on showing up. And I'm like, I refuse to deny like that he keeps on just showing up. Like I didn't know, and then he shows up again. I didn't know, and he shows up again. Here comes another threat, then he shows up again. Here comes another threat, and he shows up again. And I'm just sitting back like, God, you crazy, but this is great. Right, this is great.
Yeah.
And like, man, when you were talking earlier, like, I've been, shoot, 2:18.
That's what's
okay.
happening.
So, there's two things I wanted to get to. I was thinking about, I made a comment on Sunday. You can either be waiting on a miracle or be his miracle his miracle that's working. And I'm thinking about it, like, before you start playing, like, and I don't play a lot of video games, but when I did, because I had a slight addiction problem to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, I couldn't talk about keep me up all night. Playing video games kept me up all night. I was like, man, I had to get rid of this machine. This box is controlling my life, right? That's just how it worked. But it's anyway, I haven't been back since.
Oh man.
But I'm thinking about going back, but I'm afraid. But anyway, and so I was like, man, I'm buying one of the video game machines. You know, they cost like $1,000 now, and I was like, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I wasn't ready. So, I'll wait until Amber wants one, right? And then I'll go back and maybe play some Tiger Woods. But I love golf, so I would play the golf game, be up all night. Long story short, this is what I'm saying. Before you would play like the football game, or before you would play like even the golf game, like before you play the game, you have to pick a team. And when you pick your team, like, in most of the cases, I know for when I play golf, like, you create your perfect player. And the whole point is, like, I create the perfect player because then I put the perfect player on the team I think is most capable. Then we play the game. And I was thinking, like, there's so many Christians that are just trying to play the game. When God's trying to make you the perfect player.
Got it.
To be able to play any game.
Yeah.
And so I think we live in this, like, we live in this, like, it's like we've created this crazy purpose driven culture that we forget that, yeah, you can discover your purpose, but if you haven't become the perfect player,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter that you found it.
That's right. That's
And
good.
so Jesus is all the while at work in us, creating us into the image of Christ, which makes us the perfect player for anything we meet in life.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times what we call delay is, of course, our development.
Right.
Because before you play the game,
Right.
you want to be the perfect player. And so it's like, man, I know my purpose. And it's like, who cares? Are you the player? You know what I'm saying? It's almost like, hey, before I could play Gamage and Street Fighter, I don't know if people still play Street Fighter. I may have told on myself. But what do people play now?
Mortal Kombat.
Before I play
Kombat.
Mortal Kombat, right? I'm going to make my perfect player. And then I'll be ready for anything he throws at me. Right? But many people are trying to fight before making the player. No one fights before making the player.
Right.
And you're trying to walk in your purpose. You're trying to enjoy your purpose without being the person God wants you to be for it. And that's why that delay, right? It's not even delay, it's development.
Yeah.
Like it's like God's like, man, listen, and it's not even that deep. It's not, because, man, first of all, let's put all this in context. I always love to put these two things next. when we talk about developing as a Christian, we're not
Right.
talking about perfection. And a lot of times you can hear that being said and think, oh, you're talking about the perfect me.
Right.
First of all, ain't no such thing. You've been crucified with Christ.
Right.
When we talk about development as a Christian, and that's why I just kind of wanted to be specific, we're talking about you having enough space for faith.
Yeah.
You having enough
good.
space so that whatever you encounter, you have room to where you can be what you need to be for whatever it is you're facing. And I mean that by, man, I love it. I love when the Bible gives, like, details. And a lot of times there's not a lot of details if you really look at it. But there are details to the fruit of our spirit. Very specific of what your spirit should produce. What am I saying? I'm saying that's perfect player mode. Right? Like that's perfect
These
player.
things,
Like,
right.
when your spirit can walk in these fruits without delay,
Yeah.
you're the perfect player.
Yeah.
And so we're not talking about this abstract world of who God is expecting you to become and be. He told you what the
Very
fruit of your
laid
spirit
out.
is.
Right.
What in your life now is a hint. Like, when you look at those things, you can look at yourself
Right.
and think, like, man, you know what? Long suffering just ain't my thing.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Well, if you want to be a perfect player,
You're gonna have to develop in a long suffering.
but understand it's a fruit of your spirit.
It's in
So it's
there.
not even in your effort. It's
Right.
already in
It's
there.
in there.
In most cases, people just haven't met an experience that causes them to process
Release
the fruit
it.
that they have,
Right.
so that they can see it.
Yeah.
But if that is perfect player mode,
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we're not talking about running fast, jumping high. We're not talking about prophesying, and we're not talking about interpreting tongues. We're not talking about all these types of things. We're talking about those things: love,
Yeah.
peace.
Yeah.
Like that's perfect player, right? You know what I'm saying? But people like, man, I haven't raised to the level to be evangelist of the nations, and until I'm able to orientate the words and decipher it in a way, I am still in immature mode. What?
Right.
Those are gifts for the body, right? That help build the ministry, right? I want to give this example also too, right? Because Evan, like, her hands just got tired. I'm about to be done. So, man, I might add another week to the series. Because I really wanted to talk more about how we, like, freak out when we have a desire and we feel like it's on delay. And obviously the perfect story of this is Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael, right? God told him what he was going to do.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of people are trying to figure out, like, why they are so soul tied to a thing is because you can create a soul tie anytime you decide to avoid God's process for what he promised. Like, that's where they come from.
Yeah.
And it's like, it wasn't that he was working towards something that God didn't promise or something that he didn't have a desire for.
When you say soul tie, you mean you can be so connected to something emotionally that you're like missing
Right.
everything
So
they do.
here,
Sometimes
this is the
even
nuances that I'm
rational.
saying. A lot of people see soul ties as like I missed the mark. No, a soul tie means you skip the process. Like, but you hit the mark. That's why you're tied. Because it is what God promised. It is what God wants. You just avoided the process of getting it.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
why it's hard to break
Right.
away.
Right.
Like if
Right.
it's not a soul tie if you don't want it.
Right.
But it's a soul tie because it's exactly what I wanted.
Yep.
But because I skipped the process, I created an unhealthy relationship with something that God wanted me to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We got that.
Right?
Yep.
Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac. And you're sitting there because what happens when you're
Yeah.
what's the word? There's a word I just use. There's a word I use. It's what happens when oh man, I don't want to miss the words. I don't know if Pastor Garrett remembers this, but what I'm telling you, I taught this like, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago to the young adults, and they wanted to do a thing on soul ties. And so this is where I taught them, Abraham. I said, because most people, like, it's just an awkward moment when your promise and your problem are in the same room. Because God, the most amazing thing about that whole account to me is God's faithfulness, because he still did what he promised. And I believe a lot of people are living with what God has promised, but they haven't dealt with what their ambition created.
That's good.
And so when the fruit of your ambition is in the same room as a result of what he promised, you can't even be experiencing the joy he had for you.
Right.
And so it's like,
Enjoy it.
here he is, like God still delivered. Like he said,
Yeah.
your ambition, your unwillingness to think that God was in this time crunch,
Right.
caused you to do something in your own effort, which established a soul tie with Ishmael. But now you got a problem because he tearing your house up,
Yeah.
but you love him.
And God's still going to deliver.
Because
on
that's
his
the problem.
promise.
Because
Got
this is your son.
Right.
Right. So it's like, dang. And that's where I found a lot of believers are. Like, God is steadily doing what he promised, and you're still holding on the mistake you made. And I tell people all the time, like, you can not do not allow your future to be held like hostage by your worst decision.
Right.
Like, just go ahead and admit it. I made a bad decision, but I'm not going to hold my future hostage to my worst decision. That's a choice you have to make, to be like, Ishmael, you got to get out the house. Like, I've made a mistake, and this is hard. This is difficult. But truth of the matter is, you should have never been here. Like,
Yeah.
and you got to own it. Because God is so faithful that even in that, he kept going.
Yeah.
And I believe that's how God operates in our lives. And anyway,
That's good.
the point I wanted to get to.
Good news. Thank you, sir. It's a good Thursday. Good Thursday. We always look forward to the weekend. Well, it's here. We'll see you in the building on Sunday. Anything happening in between? The Mighty Marching Lions will be celebrating. They're on deck this weekend, so you can go and celebrate the Mighty Marching Lions as they do what they do. We'll be here in the building. Services at 10 on Sunday. We look forward to seeing you there.
Where's Deacon Frankie? I'm calling him out.
It's calling out. Somebody getting called out for real.
I ain't seen you in a month of deeper dives. Deacon Frankie, where you at?
He's in the building.
Where you at?
And I'm going to let him know that we love you, Deacon Frankie. God loves you. Keep attending from where you are and keep being most blessed. We'll see you. See you.